It's very important now for modern hadal investigations to sample the entire trench, various depths and various different kinds of habitats within this place.
What China just pulled out of the Mariana Trench is absolutely terrifying. Scientists are in complete shock. For years, we thought the deepest part of the ocean was dead, empty, impossible for life to exist. But when Chinese submersibles reached the bottom, nearly 11 kilometers down, they found something that shouldn't be there. Thousands of creatures, thriving, evolving, living in conditions that should kill anything instantly. And that's not even the disturbing part. What these organisms are doing down there could rewrite everything we know about life on Earth.
Nobody thought the ocean was this deep. So all of a sudden we've got scientists saying, why is that?
And possibly beyond. You need to see this before it goes viral. The numbers alone explain why. At the deepest point of the Mariana Trench, the water pressure reaches more than 1,000 times what we experience at sea level. That's enough force to crumple a submarine like a tin can if there's even the smallest weakness in its design. The temperature hovers just above freezing and absolutely no sunlight penetrates down there. For decades, scientists assumed that nothing could possibly live under such extreme conditions. The trench seemed like a dead zone, a barren pit at the bottom of the world where life simply couldn't exist. But that assumption has turned out to be completely wrong. The Mariana Trench is very much alive, and in recent years, new technology has finally allowed us to see what's really going on down there. China, in particular, has made a major push into deep ocean exploration, developing submersibles capable of reaching full ocean depth and staying down long enough to actually study the environment. What they've found has surprised everyone. Strange creatures thrive in the darkness. Geological processes shape the seafloor in unexpected ways. And the trench appears to play a role in Earth's systems that we're only beginning to understand. So what exactly is the Mariana Trench? And why has it been so difficult to explore? The trench sits in the western Pacific Ocean, east of the Philippines and the Mariana Islands. It marks the spot where two massive pieces of Earth's crust meet. The Pacific Plate, one of the largest tectonic plates on the planet, is slowly sliding beneath the smaller Philippine Sea Plate. This process, called subduction, has been going on for millions of years, and it's created a long, curved scar in the ocean floor that stretches for about 2,500 kilometers. To really appreciate how deep the trench goes, it helps to think about the ocean in layers. Near the surface, in the top 200 meters or so, there's plenty of sunlight. This is the part of the ocean most of us picture when we think about the sea. Fish swim, plants grow, and life is abundant. Scientists call this the epipelagic zone. Below that, from 200 to 1,000 meters down, you enter the twilight zone. Some dim light still filters down here, but it fades quickly. Bioluminescent creatures drift through these cooler, darker waters, creating their own light in a world where the sun barely reaches. This is the mesopelagic zone. Keep descending past 1,000 meters and you hit the bathypelagic zone, which extends down to 4,000 meters. Here it's completely dark. The pressure is intense, the water is cold, and only specially adapted organisms can survive. Life becomes sparse and strange. Below 4,000 meters lies the abyssopelagic zone, running from 4,000 to 6,000 meters deep. This is a vast, icy expanse where the weight of the water above creates crushing pressure, and food is incredibly scarce. Most of the ocean floor sits at these depths, but the Mariana Trench goes even deeper. Below 6,000 meters, you enter what's called the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the ancient Greek god of the underworld. This is where the deepest ocean trenches exist, and it's a realm that's barely been explored. The pressure here exceeds anything found elsewhere in the ocean, temperatures stay near freezing, and the environment is utterly hostile to most forms of life. At the very bottom of the Mariana Trench lies a spot called the Challenger Deep. This narrow, three-pronged depression reaches down nearly 11,000 meters below the surface. To put that in perspective, if you could somehow lift Mount Everest off the ground and drop it into the Challenger Deep, the summit would still be more than 2 kilometers underwater. It's the single deepest point in Earth's oceans, and one of the most extreme environments on the entire planet. Getting down there has never been easy. The technical challenges are enormous. At full ocean depth, every square centimeter of a submersible's hull experiences more than a ton of pressure. That means every component has to be engineered to perfection. A tiny crack, a weak seal, or a faulty joint could result in catastrophic failure. The sphere that protects human occupants must be machined with incredible precision, usually from titanium or specialized steel, alloys. Communication is another problem. Radio waves don't travel through water, especially not at those depths, so submersibles have to rely on acoustic systems that are slow and limited. Bringing samples back to the surface is tricky too, because organisms adapted to extreme pressure often don't survive the journey up. Their cells can rupture, their proteins can break down, and by the time they reach a lab, they're often too damaged to study properly. Because of all these obstacles, only a handful of missions have ever reached the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The first successful descent happened back in 1960, when a Swiss scientist named Jacques Piccard and an American naval officer named Don Walsh climbed into a submersible called the Trieste. It was a bold, risky mission. The Trieste was essentially a large metal sphere attached to a float filled with gasoline for buoyancy. It took them nearly 5 hours to reach the bottom, and once they got there, they only stayed for about 20 minutes before heading back up. But they proved it could be done. For decades after that, nobody else managed to repeat the feat. The technology simply wasn't available. Then, in the 1990s, Japan developed a remotely operated vehicle called Kaiko, which made several successful dives to the Challenger Deep. Unlike the Trieste, Kaiko didn't carry humans. It was controlled from the surface, which made it safer and allowed for longer missions. Kaiko collected samples and took photographs, giving scientists their first real look at the trench's seafloor in more than 30 years. In 2009, a hybrid vehicle called Nereus, built by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in the United States, also reached the bottom. Nereus could operate either as a tethered vehicle or autonomously, which gave it a lot of flexibility. Sadly, it was lost during a later mission in 2014 when something went wrong at depth and it imploded. Then, in 2012, filmmaker and explorer James Cameron made headlines by descending to the Challenger Deep solo in a submersible called Deep Sea Challenger. He spent several hours on the bottom, filming and collecting samples, and brought back some of the first high-definition footage of the trench. It was an impressive achievement, but even Cameron's mission was relatively brief. He couldn't stay long, and he could only explore a tiny fraction of the trench. These missions were groundbreaking, but they were also rare and limited. Each descent was a huge technical challenge, and none of them allowed for extended, systematic study of the environment. Scientists got glimpses of the trench, brief snapshots, but they couldn't observe it over time or explore it thoroughly. The Mariana Trench remained largely a mystery, a place we'd visited a few times but never really understood. That's what makes the recent wave of Chinese expeditions so significant. For the first time, scientists have the tools to study the trench properly, and what they're finding is changing everything we thought we knew about the deepest parts of the ocean. China's involvement in deep ocean exploration didn't happen overnight. Throughout the 2010s and into the 2020s, the country made a deliberate, strategic push to develop the technology and expertise needed to reach the deepest parts of the ocean. This wasn't just about scientific curiosity, though that was certainly part of it. There were also practical considerations. The deep ocean contains mineral resources, and understanding these extreme environments has strategic value. But regardless of the motivations, the result was a major expansion in China's deep-sea capabilities. The effort was coordinated through several institutions, with the Chinese Academy of Sciences taking the lead. They established the Institute of Deep Sea Science and Engineering, which became the hub for all of China's deep ocean research. At the same time, the country invested heavily in infrastructure. They built specialized research vessels, designed to support deep-sea missions, developed high-pressure laboratories that could simulate conditions found at extreme depths, and recruited scientists and engineers from around the world to work on these projects. The first major breakthrough came with a submersible called Jiaolong, named after a mythical sea dragon from Chinese folklore. Jiaolong began deep-sea trials in 2009, and it quickly proved that China had the technical skills to build vehicles capable of reaching serious depths. By 2012, Jiaolong had successfully completed dives below 7,000 meters, carrying human pilots and scientists into parts of the ocean that very few people had ever seen. It collected samples, took measurements, and demonstrated that China could now compete with established deep-sea programs in the United States, Japan, and Europe. Jiaolong was followed by another submersible called Shenhai Yongxi, which translates roughly to Deep Sea Warrior. This vehicle was specifically designed to operate in the deeper sections of ocean trenches, and it expanded China's ability to collect biological and geological samples from extreme environments. Shanghai Yongshi could stay underwater longer, carry more equipment, and reach depths that Jiaolong couldn't handle. But the real game changer was Fendouzhe, which means striver in English. Fendouzhe was China's first full ocean depth submersible, meaning it could reach the bottom of any ocean trench, including the Mariana Trench. It completed its sea trials in 2020, and since then it's made repeated dives past 10,000 meters. Unlike earlier missions to the trench, which were rare, one-off events, Fendouze's dives were part of a systematic, multi-year research program. Scientists could now study the trench properly, returning to the same locations, tracking changes over time, and exploring areas that had never been surveyed before. This program, called the Mariana Trench Environment and Ecology Research Program, brought together experts in biology, geology, chemistry, and engineering. The goal wasn't just to visit the trench, but to understand it, and what they discovered has been nothing short of remarkable. One of the most stunning findings came in 2025, when Chinese researchers announced they had identified more than 7,500 new species of microbes from sediment samples collected at Hadal depths. Nearly 90% of these microbes were previously unknown to science. That's an astonishing level of diversity, especially considering that scientists had long assumed the trench would support very little microbial life. The logic behind that assumption seemed sound. The trench is cold, dark, and under immense pressure. Food is scarce because very little organic material makes it all the way down from the surface. It seemed like the kind of place where only a handful of specially adapted microbes might survive, eking out a minimal existence in the sediments. But the data showed something completely different. The Mariana Trench is absolutely teeming with microbial life, and these organisms have developed remarkable adaptations to survive. Some of the microbes have enzymes that remain stable under pressures that would destroy normal proteins. Others have unique cell membrane structures that prevent them from being crushed, and many of them use metabolic pathways that scientists had never seen before. Some species appear to draw energy directly from geological processes happening deep in the sea floor, metabolizing chemicals like methane and hydrogen sulfide that seep up through cracks in the rock. This suggests that the trench isn't just a passive environment where dead organic matter accumulates. It's an active system where geology and biology interact in ways we're only beginning to understand. These findings have implications for our understanding of the global carbon cycle. Carbon enters the ocean from the atmosphere and from land, and much of it eventually sinks to the seafloor. Scientists have traditionally thought of deep ocean trenches as places where this carbon gets buried and locked away, essentially removed from the active carbon cycle. But if microbes in the trench are processing carbon through their metabolism, then these trenches might play a more dynamic role in global carbon cycling than anyone realized. That could affect climate models, because how carbon moves through the deep ocean influences how much stays in the atmosphere. But the discoveries didn't stop with microbes. Chinese submersibles also found complex animal communities living at depths that shouldn't be able to support them. Around 9,500 meters down, researchers documented fields of tube worms, clusters of bivalves, sea cucumbers, isopods, and other creatures thriving in total darkness. These animals don't rely on sunlight or on food that drifts down from above. Instead, they survive through a process called chemosynthesis. Essentially, they use chemical energy instead of light energy. In places where methane, hydrogen sulfide, or other compounds seep out of the sea floor, specialized bacteria can convert those chemicals into organic matter. Some animals host these bacteria in their bodies, essentially farming them for food. Others filter the bacteria directly from the water. It's a completely different food chain, one that doesn't depend on the sun at all. The presence of these chemosynthetic communities tells us something important about the trench. It means there are active geological processes releasing energy-rich fluids from below the sea floor. That could be happening because of volcanic activity, because of chemical reactions in the sediments, or because of the way the tectonic plates interact at subduction zones. Whatever the cause, it's providing enough energy to support entire ecosystems at depths where nothing should be able to live. The sediment samples revealed other surprises too. Researchers found unusual chemical, gradients with layers of different compositions stacked on top of each other. They found microbial mats growing around areas rich in hydrocarbons and signs that parts of the trench act as deep carbon sinks. This is information that could eventually refine our climate models, because right now, scientists don't fully understand how much carbon gets stored in the deep ocean or how long it stays there. Not all of the discoveries came from the very deepest parts of the trench. As Fendouzja descended through the upper and middle Hadal zones between 6,000 and 10,000 meters, the research teams found that these areas were far more biologically active than anyone expected. They encountered deep sea fish like the Mariana snailfish, which holds the record for the deepest fish ever observed. They found huge numbers of amphipods, including a species called Hierondelia gigas that grows to several times the size of a typical amphipod. And they documented a variety of worms, sea, cucumbers, and crustaceans that have adapted to pressures that would kill most other animals instantly. What these findings reveal is that life in the trench exists on a gradient. It doesn't just suddenly appear at the bottom. Instead, as you descend deeper, the ecosystems change gradually, becoming stranger and more specialized with each 1,000 meters. The creatures get smaller in some cases, larger in others. They develop different feeding strategies, different body structures, different ways of coping with the pressure and the cold and the darkness. The trench isn't just one extreme environment. It's a series of extreme environments, each with its own unique community of organisms. All of this has happened because China invested in the technology to make repeated, systematic visits to the trench. Previous missions gave us snapshots. Chinese expeditions are giving us something closer to a continuous picture, and that's allowing scientists to ask questions they couldn't even formulate before. How do these ecosystems change over time? How do different species interact with each other at these depths? What geological processes are active right now, and how do they influence biology? These are questions that require long-term observation, and for the first time we have the tools to pursue them. The discoveries coming out of the Mariana Trench aren't just interesting facts to add to textbooks. They're forcing scientists to completely rethink some fundamental assumptions about life on Earth, and they're raising questions that extend far beyond our own planet. For a long time, there seemed to be clear limits to where life could exist. Too hot, and proteins break down. Too cold, and biological processes stop. Too much pressure, and cells collapse. Too little water, and metabolism becomes impossible. Scientists had mapped out what they called the habitable zone, the range of conditions where life as we know it can survive. The Mariana Trench was thought to be right at the edge of that zone, and many researchers assumed that even if something lived down there, it would be barely clinging to survival. But that's not what Chinese expeditions found. The microbial communities thriving nearly 11 kilometers down aren't just surviving. They're diverse, they're active, and they're processing energy in ways that show sophisticated adaptation to their environment. This fundamentally expands our understanding of what life can tolerate. If organisms can thrive under more than 1,000 atmospheres of pressure, in near freezing temperatures, in complete darkness with almost no food, then the boundaries of the habitable zone are much wider than we thought. This has direct implications for astrobiology, the study of life beyond Earth. For years, scientists have been particularly interested in several moons in our solar system that appear to have liquid water beneath thick ice shells. Europa, which orbits Jupiter, is thought to have an ocean perhaps 100 kilometers deep under its frozen surface. Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, also shows strong evidence of a subsurface ocean. These oceans are cold, dark, and under intense pressure, much like the Hadal zone. Before the Mariana Trench expeditions, it was unclear whether such environments could support life. Now we know they can. That doesn't mean Europa or Enceladus definitely have life, but it does mean that if we ever send probes to explore those oceans, we shouldn't assume they're too extreme to support biology. The discoveries also matter for understanding Earth's climate system. Carbon moves through the environment in complex cycles. Plants take carbon dioxide from the air through photosynthesis. Animals eat plants and release carbon through respiration. When organisms die, their carbon can be buried in sediments, locked away for millions of years, or it can be recycled back into the atmosphere and oceans. Scientists have spent decades trying to map these flows, figuring out where carbon goes and how long it stays there. The deep ocean has always been part of this picture, but it was thought to play a relatively passive role. Organic material sinks down from the surface, settles on the seafloor, and gets buried in sediments. In trenches like the Mariana, that carbon would just accumulate, removed from the active carbon cycle. But the new data suggests something more complicated is happening. Microbes in the trench are metabolizing carbon. Chemosynthetic communities are processing chemicals that contain carbon. The trench might be storing carbon, but it's also transforming it and releasing it in different forms. This matters because accurate climate models depend on understanding where carbon goes. If deep ocean trenches are more active than we realized, then current models might be missing an important piece of the puzzle. The amounts of carbon involved might seem small compared to what's in the atmosphere or in forests, but over geological timescales, even small flows can have significant effects. Scientists are now working to incorporate these Hadal processes into their models, trying to figure out whether trenches are net carbon sinks or whether they release more carbon than previously thought. There's also a practical side to these discoveries. The microbes found in the Mariana Trench have adapted to conditions that destroy most biological molecules. Their enzymes remain stable and functional under extreme pressure. Their cell membranes don't rupture even when subjected to forces that would tear apart normal cells. These are adaptations that took millions of years to evolve, and they represent solutions to engineering problems that scientists and biotechnologists have been trying to solve. Pressure-resistant enzymes, for example, could have applications in industrial processes that happen under high pressure. Some chemical reactions work better under pressure, but keeping biological catalysts active in those conditions has been difficult. Enzymes from Hadal microbes might solve that problem. Similarly, the unique membrane structures found in these organisms could inspire new approaches to drug delivery or to creating materials that remain flexible under stress. Some researchers are also looking at the metabolic pathways these microbes use. If organisms can extract energy from chemicals in ways we haven't seen before, those pathways might be replicated in synthetic biology systems. That could lead to new methods for producing fuels, for breaking down waste products, or for synthesizing useful compounds. This kind of applied research is still in its early stages, but the potential is real. Beyond science, these discoveries highlight something else. The deep ocean is becoming increasingly important strategically. As technology improves and as resources on land become scarcer, there's growing interest in what the seafloor might offer. Mineral deposits, rare earth elements, methane hydrates, and other resources exist at depth, and several countries are exploring whether extraction is feasible. But before anyone starts mining the deep ocean, we need to understand what's there and what the consequences of disturbing those environments might be. The ecosystems Chinese researchers found in the Mariana Trench are fragile. They've evolved in isolation over millions of years, adapted to extremely specific conditions. Many of the species are slow-growing and probably have low reproduction rates. Disturbing the sediments, changing the chemistry of the water, or disrupting the flow of chemicals from the seafloor could have effects that cascade through the entire community. Once those ecosystems are damaged, they might not recover, at least not on any timescale that matters to humans. That makes the current phase of exploration particularly important. We're learning what exists in these environments while they're still relatively pristine. That information will be crucial if decisions ever need to be made about whether and how to use deep-sea resources. It's much easier to protect something if you understand it first. Looking forward, deep-sea exploration is entering what might be called its mature phase. China is planning more dives, more frequent missions, and longer deployments of submersibles. They're also working on expanding their fleet, building new vehicles that can reach full ocean depth and stay there longer. There's talk of establishing permanent Hadal observatories, underwater stations that could monitor the trench continuously, tracking changes in chemistry, biology, and geology over months or years. Other countries are watching closely. Japan has a long history of deep ocean research and is developing new technology to compete. The United States, despite losing the Nereus, remains active in the field. European institutions are collaborating on deep-sea projects, and even smaller nations are beginning to explore whether they can participate in this new frontier. The Hua. Deep ocean is becoming a competitive space, not just scientifically but also strategically. One area of particular interest is comparing different trenches. The Mariana Trench is the deepest, but there are other Hadal zones around the world. The Kermadec Trench off New Zealand, the Tonga Trench in the South Pacific, the Philippine Trench, and others all reach depths below 6,000 meters. Each has its own geology, its own chemistry, and presumably its own ecosystems. Are the organisms found in the Mariana Trench unique to that location, or are similar species found in other trenches? Do different trenches have different microbial communities, or are there universal patterns? Answering these questions requires exploring multiple sites, and that's where international collaboration could play a role, though competition seems just as likely. Robotics and artificial intelligence are also changing what's possible. Current submersibles, even advanced ones like Fenduja, can only stay underwater for a limited time before they need to surface. But autonomous vehicles could potentially stay down for weeks or even months, collecting data continuously and adapting their missions based on what they find. Some researchers are working on vehicles that could be deployed and left to explore on their own, sending data back via acoustic links or storing it until they're retrieved. Despite all this progress, the vast majority of the Hadal Zone remains unexplored. The Mariana Trench alone is more than 2,000 kilometers long, and Chinese expeditions have only surveyed a tiny fraction of it. There are almost certainly species that haven't been documented yet, geological features that haven't been mapped, and processes that haven't been observed. Every new dive brings surprises, and there's no reason to think that will change anytime soon. What's clear is that the deep ocean is not the dead, silent void that people once imagined. It's a dynamic, complex environment that plays a role in Earth's systems we're only beginning to understand. China's investment in exploring the Mariana Trench has opened a door that had been mostly closed for decades, and what's on the other side is reshaping how we think about our planet and about the possibilities for life elsewhere in the universe. The frontier isn't in space alone. It's also 11 kilometers straight down in the last unexplored wilderness on Earth.